Hello everyone and welcome to our presentation in this panel entitled The Kaleidoscopic Reflex, Meta-Ethnography and Media Linguistics. We look forward to presenting you with some of our ideas and discussing them afterwards. In our globalized, digitized media landscape, news has changed such that non-specialists can contribute to its production more than ever before. Communications research has also changed to better incorporate the ethnographic. Like journalists, scholars incorporate more stories into their accounts of news practitioners' work. The researcher in this mode is a subject as much as the non-journalist is a co-creator of news text, something that underpins ethnographic research and requires highlighting. Clearly, in both news media and academia, professional boundaries are blurring or being recontextualized and reconfigured. This leads us to our question: how can researcher reflexivity, or its more expanded form of autoethnography in the field, provide accountable judgments into the what and the why of news discourse? In this paper, we present the outcome of a series of reflexive and/or field-based autoethnographic explorations between 4 media linguists whose background and research covers multiple aspects of news media practice in Belgium, the UK, the Netherlands, and the US. Let's take a look at those 4 cases. The first reflexive or field-based autoethnographic exploration relates to a master tutorial for students of journalism and new media taught in a university in the Netherlands. The second series of reflection relates to an ongoing roundtable series designed to take advantage of localized media and activist knowledge and participation, which brings together journalists and linguists and anthropologists to discuss timely issues of language, representation, public discourse, social responsibility, and critique. Further explorations are related to a third case, a collaborative science journalism project, which is set in Belgium, related to a large Belgian newspaper, and is currently ongoing. And our final explorations are related to fieldwork at a French language television station in Brussels. We start from the idea that going into the newsroom and combining ethnographic observations with an analysis of the news practitioner's discourse outputs is insufficient. We join our anthropologist colleagues in arguing that schema-building reflexivity, incorporating the etic and the emic, should be part of research practice. This means foregrounding the challenges of an insider perspective, as anthropologists including Agar, Bernard and Tedlock and Mannheim have emphasized for ethnographic research. For ensuring self-questioning and accounting for one's own stand is part of the research design. Now let's zoom in on one of our cases, the case of the Journalism and New Media Master Tutorial. In this tutorial, the bottom line is co-creations. Students work together with teachers who have assigned them in part a research topic, a broad research topic, which they can then explore themselves according to their own interests. Students conduct interviews with the professionals in pairs, and students also collect each other's data in case of someone being unable to interview a certain informant. The way this research project is designed raises the notion of second-hand data and the question to what extent co-creation hampers or potentially encourages, for example in the handoff protocol, self-reflection. And the same question can be raised about the collaboration or co-construction that lies at the heart of the entire project, which leads us to describe this project as being intrinsically tangled. Interestingly, in this project, students and teachers combine different roles. Students are not only students, but also junior researchers, emerging professionals themselves as they are trained to be journalists. Teachers are teachers, but also co-researchers, partners, and supervisors. This constant role shifting and complex boundary work can lead to tensions between shared and individual goals. People have different stakes in what's happening. Students, for example, are seeking employment. Teachers are seeking visibility with potential publications. This leads to implicit self-reflection, but should this be made explicit? In this year's project, the focus was on the ombudsperson in Dutch media. Lack of trust in media has encouraged media to put ombudspersons in place, to be, in other words, more self-reflexive. Ombudspersons are an essentially reflexive business. The ombudsperson is also kind of presented as a masochist, and framing the project one way and not another way, for example, downplaying the news consumer's perspective, implies foregrounding one type of self-reflection and shutting out another. And this leads to another question: whose self-reflection are we talking about? Together with the Ombudsman project, our other projects led us to a few takeaway ideas. And the first one is that journalism and ethnography are always essentially tangled. This leads us to ask ourselves what it means for self-reflection in journalism and in ethnography as well. And how does that tie in with the notion of the journalist as an ethnographer and with journalism as a highly self-reflexive enterprise? Our second idea is that we're moving beyond auto-ethnography. Because if ethnography is all about trying to understand what's going on in the world, then maybe auto-ethnography is hampering that understanding because it makes you focus on you instead of the world you are trying to understand. And thirdly, we suggest that we might be moving towards meta-ethnography. Now, let me explain this to you in the next couple of slides. To make this more clear, we suggest calling this meta-ethnography the kaleidoscopic reflex. We want to give it that name because meta-ethnography, or the kaleidoscopic reflex, is all about centrifugal forces, in the sense that it makes you see the rest of the world with the patterns that are there, whereas autoethnography is about centripetal forces, i.e. focusing on the center. In discussing and debating this move, we end up with a few key questions. One is, whose self-reflection are we talking about? And whose ethics are we talking about in case of all of these blurring boundaries and tangled foci? We want to end this brief deep dive into our explorations with a few essential ideas, and those are that the kaleidoscopic reflex is dynamic, critically accessible, and inscribed in our final published outputs. Thank you very much for your attention, and we look forward to having a discussion.